how you are going to be the next unicorn, how you are going to achieve $100 million.
What's your ambitions?
Reducing that number from 150 years to 2 years. So I'm like, where are the women founders? I can't find them. Who wants to walk in a room and just have no women there? Yeah, jak varu po-ruski a little bit. If you don't like a system, create a new one that the other one seems obsolete.
Hi, I'm Marina Morgan, founder of the boutique organizational psychology agency, The Morgan Impact, based in Silicon Valley. Here on this channel, we discuss most relevant knowledges and practices that help me and my client build resilience and develop their businesses even in the most challenging and unpredictable times. And today on my channel, I have a very special guest that I'm really proud to have here today. She was born in Lebanon during the awful Civil War. Then moved to Canada, when she was graduated like an engineer. Then she moved to Silicon Valley. There she developed really impressive, fast and brilliant career as a tech professional. One of the cases, she transformed a team of the 7 engineers to the 40, and half of them was a woman. Right now, she is a successful serial entrepreneur that led 4 companies to the successful exit. She has her own startup studio that helped to go from the beginning to the MVP just for 8 weeks. She is a leader of one of the biggest and most active women founders community that right now well known not only in the Bay Area but also in the whole United States. She is support and inspiration for the hundreds and hundreds of women and immigrants. She is a mom. As for me, she's a fantastic example of the person who are able to combine hard-working, power, impressive business result, and very kind heart. So, Mariane Bekker, you're very welcome today.
Thank you so much for having me and the kind words during the intro. I'm very excited to be here and to chat with you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming to us. So, Mariane, there are so many topics that I really want to discuss with you about the tech industry, venture capital, artificial intelligence, a real situation with the female founders, female in tech professions. But first, of course, I want to start a little bit with your own story, because your story is like a case that typically we can hear on the executive training or even MBA's programs just to inspire the leaders. So let's start with that. And my first question will be, how do you think, what's the point of your biography bring you for today?
Yeah, definitely. There's a few moments in my life that really shaped me and who I am, and inspired me to continue my fight for women in Silicon Valley and around the world. So I was born in a civil war in Lebanon, and that's really where my story started. Unfortunately, for the first few years of my life, my family and I lived in different bomb shelters, just trying to survive day by day. Multiple times, more than I can count, we came close to death. And even though I was very young, I still remember every single moment, because these moments in time really define you. And then one night, our building got bombarded, and then we barely survived. We barely made it out. The next day, my mom, who's such a strong woman, took us to the Canadian embassy, and then she refused to leave until they gave us visas to really escape the country. And they did. But at the time, they weren't really giving visas to many people. So we were only able to get visas for her and the children. My dad had to stay behind. So then we were able to go to Canada as refugees and just start a new life there. And I'm very grateful for Canada to have taken us in. But I still remember that moment in time, and I will always remember that day where I had to say goodbye to my dad in the airport. I did not want to leave my dad. I was very close to my dad. He always inspired me, and I still remember him hugging me and me crying not to leave him. And then we made our way to Canada. And that moment in time is always stuck in my mind, because how do you say goodbye to the most important person, knowing that you really can't control the circumstances and you don't know if you're gonna see him again. And I think that taught me for the rest of my life not to take anything for granted, not to take anyone for granted, because I learned that it can be pulled away from you at any given moment. So that's one moment that really defined me. In Canada, unfortunately, even though it was great, there was no war, there was no bombs, it was still a very hard time for me because I had to leave my dad behind, but also had to come across a culture that I didn't really feel that I knew very well. And also because, I was Arabic, there was a lot of bullying for me and my brother that happened when I was growing up, which also was not a pleasant experience. But I think it really taught me that, you can't take things for granted. And also, you can't really control your circumstances. Like, I did not choose to be born in a civil war, right? I did not choose to become a refugee in Canada. And this really taught me that, we have to be compassionate with everybody around us because everybody has a different story to tell. But then just be compassionate and really help others grow and help them succeed. But in Canada, we got into where we were living in the Arabic ghetto. A lot of the women back then also had to leave their husband behind, or their husband had to stay behind because they could not find work in Canada to support their families. So I saw so much poverty and so many families suffering because they didn't have the resources to survive. And I remember we were in an elementary school, and the kids there, sometimes we did not even have money for breakfast, that they had to implement a special school program to give us breakfast in school because they found out that the students could not concentrate because they were hungry. And that really taught me that, as a woman, it's so important to be independent. It's so important to get an education, to not really have to depend on a man or your family to support you, so then you can support your kids and they can thrive. And that really, and throughout the rest of my life, from the age I was 7, I really dedicated my career, I dedicated my personal life to really empower women around me to be independent, to be successful, so they can support their families, so they don't have to go through what, I had to go through, or what the women who I grew up with had to go through. So that's one moment in my life also that impacted me.
Oh gosh,
so many to unpack.
Such an emotional story. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Of course.
It's really deep, specifically when you describe this moment with your dad. And right now, I'm from Russia, and right now my country and our neighbor country, Ukraine, is in the conflict, and half of my family is Russian, half of my family is Ukraine, and they live on both sides of this conflict. So I deeply understand what you're speaking about, because this is going on right now in our ghetto, in our community, in our language community, I can say. Okay. But as well as I know, you're faced with a lot of different obstacles when you're growing up. For example, when you moved from Canada to the United States, after you graduated as an engineer and started your career, your native language is French, right? And you need to learn English, and you need to communicate in a very, very high level, because you was a team lead or something like this. Can you please tell a little bit about it?
Yeah, definitely. So in Canada, I chose to study software engineering because I really fell in love with coding. My dad, who's my hero, who actually ended up joining us afterwards after a few years, which I'm super grateful for. He's a software engineer. He inspired me to really go into technology. And I also found that engineering is such a great career for women because it really gives you the financial stability to be able to grow and support a family. So I studied engineering in college. Then I moved to the US. My first language is Arabic and French. So when I moved to the US, I knew English as a third language. I still had difficulty speaking it, and I could understand almost everything, but moving to the US, there's a lot of expression that I could not understand. So sometimes I would be sitting in a meeting room and not understanding it. So that was definitely a challenge. And also because when English is your third language, one of the ways to grow in your career is to be kind of assertive, right? To speak up in meetings, to speak up for what you want. But because it was my third language, I didn't always feel comfortable doing that. And that really impacted my ability to stand out. But you know what, at the end of the day, a year into it, I realized that if I don't speak up for what I need, then nobody will. And then I started talking to different mentors, and one of my mentors gave me an advice that helped me throughout my career. And that advice was always ask for more, ask for the promotion, ask for the extra responsibility. Because what is the worst case that could happen? The worst case is they say no to you. And that worst case is not bad at all. There's not, just a no is not a worst case. So then I started asking for it. And a year into my career, so I joined as a web engineer at a company here in Silicon Valley that was owned by Hearst Media. A year into it, I went to my manager and I worked so hard that year, and I quickly became like the team lead for that project. I asked them, can you give me the title of senior software engineer? And I don't want a salary raise. I just want that title. And she's like, okay, I'm going to think about it. And then she said yes to it because I was already the team lead. And I think a year into it, as soon as I got promoted to senior engineer and I got that title, my career just skyrocketed. So I think my advice for all the women out there is, whether English is your third language, whether you're an immigrant, whether you don't look like anybody else in the room, it doesn't matter. Just ask for what you deserve. The worst case is a no, but the best case is something that will change the rest of your life.
Do you remember the first moment when you saw the Golden Gate?
I do. I had moved here after college, and it was so breathtaking. I think not only the Golden Gate, but the entire bay. And I remember the first thing that I saw was all the sailboat happening. And then one of the things that I wanted to do was actually learn how to sail, which I did get my license.
What's the moment like, for example, oh, I will belong to this place, I will win here, I'm coming here to create something really great?
Yeah, so I moved here as a student, and I didn't know if I was gonna live here forever or not, but I remember just being, my breath was taken away by the beauty that California has. I mean, look at this. It looks beautiful, it's gorgeous. You see the ocean and you see the bridge, and then you see the beautiful architecture. And San Francisco, the architecture is like no other city in the world. It's so unique, and it has such a unique energy and vibe that I remember just saying to myself, I hope that I can find a way to stay here forever. And I'm so grateful every day that I get to live here.
Okay, Mariane, as well as I understood, things that you're doing for the women in the world is some kind of your mission. And I want to dedicate most part of our conversation for this topic. And you know, when I prepared to this meeting with you, I dive a little bit into the numbers. I knew something about that. But when I found the numbers, what's going on really in the venture capital industry, in women in business and women in tech, I was really very surprised. So, a little bit numbers. I will use my notes to not miss something. 2% of the total VS dollars went to the companies founded solely by the women. 2%. And this is United States numbers. If we were speaking about the European Union, it will be 1.8. New Zealand and Australia, 1.9 or something like that. So this is the highest number in the world. Despite generating 2.5 more revenue per dollar invested, women-led startups received 21% less funding than male-led peers. Investors are twice as likely to fund male-founded startups in sectors like femtech,
Wow.
even when women dominate leadership. And one more, women hold 26% of venture capital investments roles, but only 20% of them are partner positions, limiting their influence on their funding decisions. I was really impressed, because every year we can find some stats like 2022 per 2021, women-founded startups got, I don't know, several millions more than in previous year. And it sounds more or less good, but the realities look like this. And I wanted to ask you, as somebody who very deeply into this industry and see it inside, how does it look like inside? What's the women founders facing?
Yeah, the numbers are a little bit crazy to think about, right? So women start over 50% of all the business in the US. They start over 35% of all the tech companies, yet women-founded startups still receive less than 2% of all the VC funding. And that number is decreasing year after year. What it looks like inside is actually quite frightening because women make amazing entrepreneurs. So there are so many studies that show that for every dollar that you invest in a woman, she returns $1.77 in investment compared to their male counterpart, which returns 1.33 cents in return. So women return 3x the amount of money to investors that men founders do. So actually investing in women is not only right for society, but it also great for business. So why is that we're still receiving less funding than our male counterpart? And what it translates to is that women don't have the right resources to grow their startups. As you know, growing a startup or starting a startup, you need capital. You need capital to hire engineering team. You need capital to invest in marketing. You need capital for your go-to-market strategy. And if you don't receive the funding to do that, you have to bootstrap it all on your own. And it's very hard to create the next unicorn when you don't have the capital to do that. So women are struggling to raise funding, but luckily, the trend is that I'm seeing is that there's more awareness for that problem, and all the women are coming together to really help support each other, to fund each other. So that's what I created Women Founders Bay. Women Founders Bay were one of the largest and most active communities of tech female founders here in the Bay Area now. And we're supporting over 600 startups, all female founded, and we're sharing resources on how to get investment, how to find the right investor. And then when we look at the community at large, what we find is that even though those numbers are against us, a lot of people are supporting us. A lot of people, men and women, are coming together to try to solve that problem in Silicon Valley. And that's giving me a lot of hope for the future.
So, and this, how long are you taking care about this thing? How long?
Yeah, so I started Women Founders Bay a year and a half ago. And the reason that I started it is because I started my own company to help companies hire more women engineers. And that grew fast. And then I started going to tech events and I couldn't find any other women. There was always like one or two women in the room. So I'm like, where are the women founders? I can't find them. So then I started this community to meet other women founders, and we just grew so fast in such a short period of time.
How do you see, you already mentioned it, that you feel real support from the people here, and there are a lot of people who are really interested in it. But do you see the real dynamic in venture capital industry for all the years that you're involved in it, specifically in this issue?
Yeah, definitely. I think women face a lot of challenges when it comes to VC and getting funding. The first one is that there's not a lot of resources out there to help us succeed. What does that mean? Is that especially immigrant women who are new here to the scene, currently how VC works is that you probably get funding if you know a VC, right? If you have a large network of VCs around you. But let's say you're an immigrant woman. Let's say you just moved here. How would you build that network? If you don't have that big network, then it's harder for you to raise funding. The second thing is that also women are not being represented in the different entrepreneurial voices. If you look on social media, 80% of all tech influencers are men, right? So as a woman, let's say you are building your startup, and then if you don't see people around you who look like you or who are going through the same challenges as you are, you're going to feel even more defeated, right? And then the third problem is there's a lot of biases happening in the VC industry when women are pitching. So there's a study made by Harvard that evaluated how women are perceived when they pitch compared to their male counterpart. And they compared the same type of entrepreneur, the same startup together when they're pitching. And what they found is that when a woman is pitching to a VC, the first reaction, the first unconscious reaction that VC has is to start asking her questions that are pessimistic. Like, how are you going to make sure we're not going to lose money? How are you going to make sure that you're not going to go bankrupt? And what that does is that it puts you on the defensive. So you're already losing from the start. But then when they're asking the man who is building the exact same type of startup questions, what they ask is, how are you going to be the next billion-dollar company? How are you going to, make sure that you rise above all of your competitors? So as a woman, what I suggest and what they found in that study, how you can counteract that is, instead of answering that pessimistic question, you actually answer the opposite question, how you are going to be the next unicorn, how you are going to achieve $100 million in revenue. So unconscious bias plays a huge part, networks plays a huge part, and also seeing ourselves represented plays a huge part in just improving the conditions for women, improving their chance of growing a successful startup.
I see here two sides. First side is coming from the women's side. I mean, that you mentioned about it, the network, the education, specifically if we're speaking about the women immigrants. And this is the reality. The leaders of the venture capital industry, they are from same universities, same communities, same colleges, and it's very difficult to get an access to this, to this close community. But we still have a lot of different opportunities. But there is another side, because those who asking this question, the financial investors, most of them are women. And also, as well as I know about it, you develop relationship with your clients, with another funds, with investors. You're a very specific, how can I say it, way of spending your free time. It can be, I don't know, some alcohol, parties, tough sport, or something like that. And I know that mostly you develop in the relationship during this field. And there are not so much women there. And I think maybe there is another side, and mentioned about it when we spoke about the numbers, that there are not so many women in the venture capital industry from the side of investments. Mm-hmm. And what do you think about it? Why it is so?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned, right, only maybe less than 30% of VCs are women. And it goes back to the same thing, is in order for you to become an investor, it's not like you have to go and study something in college and then you become an investor. It's really, such a coveted job that everybody wants that job, that a lot of VC funds that start, they end up hiring the people that they know, right? And then if your network is mostly men and women are not present, then you're most likely going to hire a man at the end of the day. So there's not that many women funding women. There's not that many VCs who are women who can go and then talk to the women founders, and that's a big problem. And I want to reiterate your point, is that yes, I do believe right now that a lot of deals, a lot of those hiring decisions are made at those parties, are made in social scenes, right? And I noticed that. And we can do two things. We can try to ignore it and say, okay, well, this is not the way to go, right? Let's change it. Or what if now women start leading the social scene, right? What if women start hosting these parties? And that's exactly what we're doing at Founders Bay. I noticed that a lot of the VC deals are made on golf course, are made at those parties. And it's such a small circle that I don't see a lot of women founders there. So now at Founders Bay, what we started doing is we started taking ownership of the night scene. We started taking ownership of the entertainment. Last week, we did a big party. It was attended by 2,000 founders and VC. We got sold out, called the Giga Party. And in there, we combined both. From 6 to 10 p.m., it was panels and talk. And then from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., we just had DJs. And we had almost every VC firm in the world represented there. But because women were leading the way and organizing it, we made sure that 50% of the attendees were women. We make sure that women were represented in panels, in pitches. we made sure that women were at the forefront. So we're changing things in that area by taking over the social scene. And just an anecdote, so I'm a single mom. A lot of the women founders are mom. So we were thinking, I know that a lot of deals right now are happening on the golf course, but what if we start doing play dates? And what I would like to see is in the next year, us mom come together, even when we have our kids, and start talking deals there. So I think in 1 year, we're gonna change things, that deals are no longer gonna happen on golf course, but they're gonna happen on play dates.
Ooh, I want to pause. It really sounds perfect, and I really want that it will happen. I read a very interesting report for the World Economic Forum about the gender gap in the business industry, and there was an information that right now the parity. The gender parity in the business industry. We're speaking not only about the venture, we're speaking about the C-levels, managers, business owners in different countries. So right now this parity is something like 68%. And for their prognosis, we need 153 years to achieve 100%. And I want to ask you a question. What's your ambitions to give your personal impact for these numbers? How do you feel?
Yeah, and it's so sad that so many studies that show it's going to take us 115 years to achieve gender parity. But here's the thing, is that I refuse to leave this world without having changed this once and for all. And I heard this quote that really impacted me, is that if you don't like a system, create a new one, that the other one seems obsolete. And I really believe if us women come together, if we start supporting each other, if we start hiring each other, funding each other, promoting each other on social media, we can actually create a system where women are leading the way, where women are put in position of power, where they are being highlighted on social media, when they're being highlighted at events, on speaking opportunities, when every time there's a pitch competition, at least 50% of the founders pitching are women. I think that if we come together and we really change the system and we show that there is a world out there, there is a tech industry in Silicon Valley where women can have 50% representation, and that world is way better than the old world out there, that this is obsolete. And I think we are doing this right now. I remember at one of my Women Founder events, now a lot of men come to support us in our Women Founder events. One man came to me and he said, well, Mariane, I don't feel comfortable anymore going to other organizers' event because there's no women there. There's no diversity. It's not as fun. It doesn't feel right. That's why I now only come to your event. So I think if we show the world that actually diversity is good for everybody, because who wants to walk in a room and just have no women there, right? You want to walk in the room and see women and men and immigrants and different perspective. It's just a better environment. It's a more fun environment. And I think we are showing the world that it is possible. It is possible. It is a better experience. And that's how we're going to start, reducing that number from 150 years to 2 years.
Mariane, I read several posts on your LinkedIn where you describe the situation where you're facing with discrimination, even in the Silicon Valley professional business event. You wrote about when you told about what the things that you are doing. You mentioned that you are as a developer using ChatGPT, and then it was some guy from financial industry, if I'm not mistaken, when he introduced you for somebody. He told she's using just ChatGPT, means that you are not able to be an engineer by yourself. And I think that this is very, very important that you're speaking about a situation like this publicly, because I think one of the problem, or maybe not a problem, like an obstacle, is that there is so many things are normalized for us, like women, because we're growing up in this environment, in this business environment, and we just think, oh, that's okay, that's like it should be. The thing that you mentioned, that when women are pitching their startups, they had absolutely another questions. This is the part of that, when we accept like normal thing that we shouldn't accept like a normal thing. And I want to ask you maybe to give a couple of examples of situation like this that you may be faced, or some from your community, of course, anonymously, because I want that every woman that will listen us understand that level of the norm can be absolutely another, and maybe stop to accept it?
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about my example. So when I studied engineering in college, I remember that first day when I went into my first class. It was a math class, and I walk in the room and there was no woman there in engineering. And then I started going to the different floors, and again, there was no woman in the entire engineering building. And that was my story for the next 4 years of my life. On stage, when I graduated, I believe there was only one woman with me who graduated in engineering. And then I thought when I would move to Silicon Valley from Canada, things would change. But it was, again, the same story over and over again, where I would always be one of the only women engineer in the room. And there's a lot of studies that show that when a woman walks into a room for an engineering interview, for example, automatically, when unconscious bias makes it that the woman is rated 2 to 3 points less, because there's a stereotype that women are not as technical. And I definitely, during my career, had to prove myself to say that, hey, I am technical, right? And that's a perfect example of what happened to me. I was hosting an AI conference, and I remember I was on stage for probably 8 hours talking about AI, introducing the host. And then during the lunch break, I was talking to a few of my colleagues, and I was saying that, hey, you know what? Now with ChatGPT, I can be 10x more productive in coding. It really helps engineers be more productive. It really kind of changed the game for engineers like me. And then one person, when someone else came, he turned around and he's like, hey, this lady is not technical at all, but now she can code with ChatGPT. And I think it really affected me. And I don't get angry. I'm a very, very calm person. But I got angry because literally was on stage talking about AI, introducing every single person. On my LinkedIn, it is very clear that I'm an engineer. I managed over 150 engineers in my career. So why is this person assuming that I'm not technical? And I think that's a lot of the women's experience in engineering. So that's one moment in my career. The other moment, and I think I'm still traumatized by that one, is that early on in my career, maybe 2 years into my software engineering career, there was a colleague that became very aggressive towards me. And then they became so aggressive towards me, probably for 6-month time, they were causing me a lot of problems, and I could not understand what was going on. And then when I would go and tell my manager about it, my manager told me to just man up, like conflicts are normal, go get a glass of water. My concerns were not taken seriously. And it became such a toxic environment for me that I at the end had to leave that job. I quit and I found another job. And then on my way out, I learned that the reason why that engineer was like that is because they were somehow in love with me, and then they couldn't take it that I didn't want to be with them, and that's why that happened to me. And then I went to tell my manager about it, and then my manager at that moment didn't address my concern. But worst is that later on I found out that he was telling all of my teammates that this happened because it's my fault, because I was wearing nice earrings at work. And if I didn't want this to happen to me, why was I wearing nice earring and nice clothes? Again, it was blaming me for a situation that I couldn't control, right? And I think these like small moments in time really impact the ability for women in engineering, one, to stay in that field, and two, to really thrive, because you're faced with discrimination, you're faced with kind of stereotypes every single moment on your career, and you can't really thrive in it all.
What can you recommend to the women that faced with a situation like this? What should be the reaction? I don't know, keep silence and go to the therapy after that, or fight at the moment, or how do you think, what reaction can be less traumatized for the women?
Yeah, and I thought a lot about that. I think when I was a little bit younger, to be honest, I stayed silent in that situation because I didn't want to cause problems. I was intimidated. I was probably 23, 24 at the time, just fresh out of college. I didn't know anything about life. And I did stay silent. But the worst part is that a woman colleague of mine after that faced the same exact thing from the men, and then she actually got fired for it, right? And I think that taught me that discrimination and kind of these types of situation, they thrive on silence. So I would recommend women to start speaking up to their manager, to start speaking up on social media, because we should not stay silent in all of that, right? We should expose these types of behavior to the world to see, but also that inspires other women to speak up. But only do that if you feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable, it's okay to stay silent. So I recommend, stay silent, and also maybe talk to another woman who can help support you, because they will believe you, they will understand what you're going through, and they will be your biggest advocate.
I will share with you one story from my own business experience. I worked in the big technological company in Russia in human resource department. It was maybe 10 years ago, something like that, and it was economical crisis based on the Crimea and all this stuff. We need to reorganize the organizational structure of our business, because the amount of the price of the dollar just was very high, and at the end of this transformation, we found that the best employee for us is the single mom who needs official job to pay for some loans and take care about her kids officially, and to have some official support because she needs this official job. And honestly speaking, my company put those employees in very bad circumstances, and that it was a global crisis. It was very difficult to find a job at that period. And single mom was somebody who was ready to accept even not very good deals because they need to take care of. So as well as I know, you're a single mom too, and I know that there are a lot of women in the world who keep silence because they're afraid to lose their job, to lose their opportunities, and they have this responsibility to take care of their kids. And if you're ready to that, maybe you can a little bit tell about your personal experience in it, how you're balancing these things. And because I want that your amazing example will be some kind of source of support for these women to be brave, to know that they're not alone, and that there are different situations in the world, and you really have some options besides keep silence.
Yeah, and first off, I'm a single mom. It is extremely hard to be a single mom, right? Because now your life is not only about you, it's about your kids. And I know, my kids for me are everything. And I think about my kids all the time. Like, we can't live without our kids. I don't exist without my kids, right? So I'm thinking about them all the time. And it's a hard situation to be in because you want to provide for them, right? And first and foremost, you want to give them the best life possible. So then you have two choices. The first one is to speak up and to risk losing your job. The second one is to stay silent and then kind of accept that behavior. Honestly, I don't know if there's a good answer either way, because it really depends on your circumstances, right? If this is maybe you're living paycheck to paycheck and you need that money to survive, and next month if you don't have that paycheck, then the kids cannot eat, then it's a hard situation. It's not something that I can recommend either option. But I want you to know that, what I found when I started speaking up is that there's so many people around you, men and women, that will come to support you, no matter what we're hearing in the news, in the media. I think a lot of people want to support, especially if you are a single mom. So if you want to speak about your situation, I encourage you to do so, and then you'll find people in your corner. If you don't want to, don't feel bad about it. Like, everybody has their own circumstances. So I think just trust your instinct at the end, feel what's right for you and what doesn't feel right for you. At the end of the day, I know, like, women are so strong. Especially moms, right? We had to birth a child. We have to take care of human beings. So trust in your power to solve it, trust in your power to make the right decision, and whatever you choose, don't judge yourself, because I think this is what the problem as women we have is, like, we tend to judge ourselves so much. Don't judge yourself, just believe in yourself, and I think things will be okay at the end because you have yourself to rely on.
I heard that you speak Russian a little bit, right?
Yeah, я говорю по-русски a little bit. So
How is possible?
my kids are half Russian, and I was actually living in the Russian neighborhood for probably 13 years in San Francisco. When I moved here, I moved directly there, and I just loved the food, the kilbasa and the pelmeni and the blini, and I tried to learn Russian. I learned how to read, but it was very, very hard to just learn how to speak. So I say a few words.
One strange things that you think about Russian culture.
Because I kind of spent my whole 20s in the Russian community, I don't think that I see anything strange, because that's my normal.
I mean, maybe some strange food or something like that you was really surprised.
Yes. So some of the strange food was the tongue of the beef, the tongue of the cow.
Favorite.
Yeah, the tongue of the cow. I know that's very popular, and that for me was a little bit weird.
I read that the moment when you're going through the divorce, there was a moment when you feel really, really bad, and your little kid come to you and ask, "Mom, are you okay?" And at that moment, you understood that you should do something. And if I'm not mistaken, you decided to make the Women Founders Day at that period, right?
Yeah. So 3 years ago, I got divorced, and it was a very challenging time because I come from a culture where divorce is not acceptable yet. I come from a culture where, as a woman, you're taught that you have to stay in the marriage, you have to protect your family, because what will other people think, right? Well, how will your kids grow up in a broken family, right? You are being selfish if you are doing something for yourself. So after my divorce, I think for the first year or year and a half, I was numb. I couldn't even cry. I was in so much, I don't know if I had pain. I couldn't move. And I remember I used to lie in bed at night and not be able to move and just listen to sad songs, not able to cry, not able to feel, not able to breathe. And then after a year and a half of that, one night my son cried to me, and then I went to get him and he hugged me and he said, "I love you, mommy." And then I realized that, you know what, I did get divorced, but it shouldn't define me. I still had my dreams, I still had my passions and my goals, and why would I let what other people think of me or what society kind of instructed me to do really defeat my goals? So at that moment, I chose to actually pursue what I always wanted, which is to actually make a difference in the tech industry, to promote women, to empower women. So then I wrote down all the bucket list items that I wanted to do. Even some were crazy. Some was like, okay, become a tech influencer so that you can talk about women's rights. One was like, speak at TechCrunch.
Mariane, I know that right now a lot of women in our country, United States, have some, worry about their political agenda. I don't want to go deep into this. The only one thing that I want to ask you about, can you say some supportive words for those people who right now feel some anxiety about what's going on?
Yeah, I just want to say that whatever you're feeling now is valid. I would say that the more that they push against us, the more that they try to take away the narrative, the more that we got to come together and support each other. There is one way where we once and for all change things for women, and that's by coming together and supporting each other. Right now, women by 2030 will control the majority of the wealth in the United States. If we all come together, if we start funding each other, if we start hiring each other, if we start even liking and commenting posts on social media about each other, we're really gonna make a difference. So what I would say for all the women that are feeling anxiousness there, that you are not alone. You have a community there to support you. If you're a women founder, you can apply to join my community, womenfoundersbay.com/apply. And whatever you are feeling, you're going to have thousands of women behind you supporting you. You are not alone in this. And then no matter what happens, I know that we're going to be okay because we have each other. And I think people don't realize how much power and strength women have in this country. And then when we band together, honestly, there is no stopping us.
So this is the time to tell more about the Women Founders Bay, how people can join to your community. Is this community open to the women, for example, who right now are not living in the Silicon Valley or in the US, but want to be and want to move here, for example? Please tell a little bit more about how to join and also how to support.
Definitely. So there's two organizations that are here to support you. The first one, it's a nonprofit called Women Founders Bay. If you go to womenfoundersbay.com/apply, you can apply to join. Right now, we are mostly in Silicon Valley, but we are going to expand internationally. So please do apply, even if you're not in San Francisco. The second part is that I run a huge community of founder and VC that is open to both men and women called Founders Bay. And that's a newsletter where we provide resources for any founder, operator, or VC to succeed. We have tons of workshops every week that are accessible virtually, so anybody in the world can access them. If you go to foundersbay.com, you can go and subscribe to the newsletter. Right now, we are providing a private membership where during the private membership, for a small fee per month, you can get access to all our workshops for free. You can access all the office hours for all the experts and even one-on-ones with me as well for free. And then another thing that we are doing is that we are starting an angel syndicate where we are going to fund the next generation of AI startups that we think are going to become unicorns. So if you want to join the Angel Syndicate, or if you want to even break into VC but don't know how to start, for 5 or 10K a year, you can really start learning that. So you can go to foundersbay.com/launchpad and you can apply to join the syndicate there.
Can you recommend any else resources that can help women maybe to have some, I don't know, courses, have some support in their business initiatives or whatever it is?
Yeah, unfortunately, right now, a lot of the nonprofit that I would recommend got shut down. So I would say if you want to know more about startups and how to grow startup, Y Combinator has a lot of good resources online to do that. There are tons of online courses about fundraising. There's tons of accelerators. Let's say you have a startup idea but don't know how to start. Accelerators are always accepting applications. And then if you go on my LinkedIn, I have a featured post about the top 10 accelerators. So just apply there because those are great resources for you to have.
I strongly recommend for you to subscribe for the Mariane LinkedIn page because really it's a fantastic source of different important events, recommendations, links, articles, and thank you so much for combining it and sharing with us. Okay, I want to switch a little bit to the artificial intelligence industry because I know that you're obsessed with that a little bit. I have two questions here. First questions will be a little bit provocative. I think you know this case about the Amazon when they tried to invite the AI like a recruitment of the first line, and they tried to make some kind of blind hiring. And honestly speaking, the results wasn't diverse. So how do you see what pros and cons we can see through the diverse perspective, specifically gender diverse, as much as artificial intelligence will be integrated in our business industry?
Yeah, on the diversity side, there are mass studies out there that actually evaluated the productivity of teams that were diverse vs the productivity of teams that weren't diverse. And in every single case, diverse team that had more women on it had maybe 30% to 60% better results. And I even saw that when I was leading engineering at MindBody. I grew the team from 7 to 50 in San Francisco, Pune, and New York. But my team in San Francisco, we were able to achieve 55% women engineers. And I think we quickly became the most productive team at Mindbody, because diversity means that you have more thought experiment, you have more perspective, which at the end of the day is better for business. The second part on the AI side, right now, AI, how it works, or how the AI work, is that it basically takes the old data, right? It takes the old data to produce new data. So if that old data does not have enough women voices out there, or it doesn't have enough information specifically around women, like around women's health, then the new data that the AI is going to get generated is going to work better for men than women, for example. So it's really important that women are represented in AI, that they train the model, that data around women's health, data around how around women is being integrated into the AI. So in the future, the new data being generated is optimized for all of us, not just for men in particular.
Okay, I got your point. So you mean as much as we will collect this data about the better business results, as more objective artificial intelligence can be, for example, helping us to make some business solution or managing the diverse factor in the board member team, right?
I think it's more when you are training the AI model to make sure that whatever data that you're feeding has as many women represented as men, because that's just going to help the AI make better decisions in the future. And I think that because now a lot of the data that exists out there does not have as many women representation, it's really important that whoever is developing those models make sure that they go out of their way to try to unbias that data as much as possible.
So thank you so much for the answer. And I have one more question about the AI industry for you, like the first thing, the engineer, and also person from the business. So there are a lot of conversation in the venture capital industry about the future of an AI companies for the business perspective, because right now these companies are very expensive, and they don't have any profit because they have huge expenses for the chips and all these things, and there's not obvious business model for the different AI companies, specifically if we're speaking about the giants like OpenAI or some other one. So what do you think about it? What do you think about the perspective of this industry for the profit? Will it be able to be profitable? And I don't know, what should investors do?
Yeah, so this begs the question whether AI companies are sustainable over time. And I get that question a lot. I think what people don't realize is that an AI startup at the end of the day is still a startup at its core. Whether they are building an AI tool or whether they're using AI in their product or their product feature is some kind of LLM, it doesn't really matter. They're a startup. And right now, what's more important for a startup, more than the technology, more than what the product does, is their ability to sell. It's their ability to distribute the product. In the past, for example, it was less important. Distribution was less important. In the past, if you had a very unique product like the Ubers of the world or the Airbnb that really redefined categories, they became so popular because it was such a unique product. It was such a unique idea that they became huge that way. But right now, almost every idea has been implemented. So I would say focus less on the product and more on your distribution channel. If you have an audience, if you're able to sell your product, if you're able to get paying customers, then your business is going to be more sustainable over time. And right now, especially the last few years, we weren't maybe you can call it a recession, but we were in a downturn, investors are more wary on what they want to fund. But there's still a lot of money going to startups. So if you focus and make sure that you have a distribution channel, that you have a customer, that you found product market fit, then it doesn't matter what industry it is. It doesn't matter if you're doing AI, if you're not doing AI. If you have traction, then you can build a sustainable business. So I would say just focus on that and less about the AI piece of it.
Okay, got it. As well as I know, you use AI technologies in your another company that helps startups to go this path from the idea to the MVP just for their 8 weeks, right? Can you please tell a little bit more about this direction of your interests?
Yeah, definitely. So as I said, I'm an engineer. In the past, when you wanted to build an MVP, you needed a team of 5 to 8 engineers. You probably need 3 to 6 months to build an MVP to release it in production. But now, because of AI, it's making everybody more productive. So you can actually, AI can write the code for you. Of course, you still need to architect it, but with using AI to produce that code to architect the system, we were able to actually, in the last year, develop 5 different MVPs in 8 weeks or less. So that is really good news for all of us, because that means that the amount of money and resources that it used to take to build a product from the ground up is now reduced to weeks and not months anymore. So now having a company and creating a product is more accessible to everybody, which is great for diversity, because now we need less capital to actually build the product. So that's a huge advantage that startup founders have and will continue to have, as AI will actually make you more productive, and it will reduce the cost of you going to market with a product.
For somebody who wants to join, how can they do it?
Yeah, definitely. So again, if you want our resources, or if you want to learn about the partners that we have to build your MVP or for marketing, you can go to foundersbay.com/launchpad and apply there as a founder, or just join my newsletter.foundersbay.com. And once you become a member, we have resources in place for you, where if you need to build your MVP, if you need marketing for a very affordable price, we're going to provide you with those resources.
You very often speak about it, that your network and your audience is your main resource. And I think, it's very, very trendy from your side, because I think that we're living really an economy of attention. And Elon Musk, for example, he's not only the richest man for his capital, he's the richest man for the audience that we have, because, I don't know, his Twitter followers rising million per day, and it's really impressive. But you know that in tech industry, not most of the people are very, very developed in their social skills and their networking skills. Any recommendations here? Yeah,
and again, as I said, the most important thing for your product right now, and even your brand if you're not building your startup, is your audience, is getting people's attention. And right now, we live in a world where we all have access to the most powerful tool to get people's attention, to get distribution, and that's social media. And a lot of people are intimidated to go on social media, to start writing content, because you hear a lot of voices out there, you hear a lot of negative feedback, but at the end of the day, if you have an audience, if you build your brand online, whether you're a founder, whether you're an executive, whether you're just starting out in your career, it's going to give you a huge advantage, because suddenly your network is no longer who you can go and physically talk to, it's the entire world. So I always recommend women, men, or anybody who is just starting out or who really wants to expand their career or grow their startup to start going on social media. And I know it's intimidating, but it can be done. Like a few years ago, I think I had maybe a year and a half ago, I had 2,000 followers, and I wanted to start writing content, and English is my third language. So I was very, very intimidated by it, but I still went for it. And then in a year and a half, I grew my follower count. I think now across all my channel, I have over 60,000 followers. So don't be intimidated. It can happen. And social media is a process. So learn how to grow your social media. And then once you have the audience, honestly, there's no stopping you, because now my network is no longer 10 people. My network is 60,000 people, and it can happen to you as well.
One more question here. I know that you're publicly fighting against discrimination for the immigrants. Specifically, you mentioned that you're not agree with the fact that you're unable to use your diploma in another country, and or your experience is irrelevant. And I want to be honest with you and with the people who will watch us. I moved to the United States when I was 35 years old, in the top of my career, and psychologists not recommend to do it because, you already have some expectation of the reality. You have some connection with your social role. For example, in my case, it was successful woman with a great network that can really solve any issue that I want to solve in my business or my personal life, and you just need to start over. I was ready for that because I moved here because I wanted it. It was my desire. I just want to make a next step in my personal development and explore some new opportunities. But I heard here, I think maybe 100 times, put your diploma in the drawer and forget about it. All of your experience is interesting for nobody here. What else it was? Please cut off from your CV all your leader's position, all your position that you manage the teams, because this is again irrelevant for this market, and it will, you will be overqualified for the some position. For another position, you can pretend because you are new person here. I was ready for that, and also I'm a professional psychologist. I know how to manage my condition, and that's why it didn't stop me. I'm develop my online. I'm developing my social media, and I agree with you that this is very, very important. But I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are stopped by the feedback like this, like I had, and I think all the immigrants had, not only in the United States. I want to say that the United States is very loyal for the immigrants, but in another country there are different situations. So, what is generally your opinion about it? How, in your opinion, maybe it can change with some kind of win-win to the business and to the immigrants? And what else we can say for the people who right now stop themselves?
Yeah, and I have to say, I have to applaud you, because you're so brave at 35 to just leave the world that you had behind and just start over. So I respect all immigrants who do that, because it takes so much strength to leave your family, to leave everything that you love and go to a new country. And I've seen it firsthand growing up in the Arabic ghetto. I've seen people who were doctors or who were surgeons in their country, and they come to the country and then they are told their experience is no longer relevant, and then they have to start fresh and work at restaurants. And then worst of all, people were bullying them because they're like, well, you didn't get educated, so you don't deserve this, right? So it's like a double whammy as an immigrant to come to that country. And it is hard to start over. But here's the thing, is that social media kind of democratize everything, because people who don't know about your education, don't know about your skill set on social media. So if you start building an audience, regardless of what your background is, then that's your superpower, because now you have an audience that is listening to you, you have an audience that is respecting you, and then you already have skill set that you developed in your country, right? Either, I'm sure, you've achieved a very high career in your country, all that skill set, all the things that you learn, you can now create content around it, and people, right, will recognize you for it, because they're gonna hear something different, you're gonna teach them something. So I would say, one, don't listen to that advice. You are more capable than whatever people think of you. And then if you have something so unique, if you've learned something so unique in your country, start writing content about it, and then slowly but eventually people will start following you for it, and then will start recognizing you as a thought leader.
I think that you're absolutely right, and this is a really good option for the people who move to another country and start over. And there are a lot of people right now like this in the world. So thank you so much for this recommendation. We are coming to the final questions. And I want to ask you maybe to share some advices with people who are right now watching us and thinking about opening their business, try their first startups. And I want that you share those advice that you never shared publicly.
Of people starting their own business, I would say, before you do that, before you go ahead and start your own business, make sure that you have enough runway to sustain yourself for at least 2 years without income. because I see a lot of founders go in and think, all right, I'm going to just take the leap. I'm going to start my startup and then I'm going to raise funding. But the reality of it is by the time you raise funding, it could take 2 to 5 years to do that. So you want to make sure that you have a runway so you are taken care of. If you are not able to sustain yourself for 2 years without income, then one of the things that I suggest is just to do it on the side to see if you can get traction. And then once you start seeing traction, once you start seeing revenue in, then at that point, I would encourage you to leave your job. But always think about that you need 2 years of runway, 2 years of making no money for you to be able to raise funding.
Good point. Okay, Mariane, I love to prepare some gift to the people who are watching us and listening us, but I want that this gift will be useful for your mission as well, because I strongly support it. And my suggestion, how do you think if we will ask those people who are right now listening and or watching this video, write in the comments any ideas that can support your mission. It can be technology, startup, it can be some ideas of scaling, it can be just some thoughts about it. And those who you'd like the most, we can give my consultation and also, for example, maybe some kind of VIP membership in your community.
Yeah, I love that idea. The best idea, I will give them a 1-month VIP membership to my community. And with that, you get access to all of our events for free, all of our workshops for free, and you get one-on-ones with myself and other expert advisors.
It's perfect. So please, everyone, right below the comment with any ideas that can support the Mariane's mission, and those that will like the most, we will write you, and you will get your gift. Mariane, the last question for today. How old are your kids right now?
So one is 5 and one is 8.
When you're thinking about their future, what kind of world do you want to create for them?
I would like to create a future for them where, regardless of someone's background, regardless of where they were born or what gender they are, they have equal opportunities to succeed and thrive, and that the world is a safe place for every single one of us.
It was Mariane Bekker. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Where I feel the most powerful,
Yeah.
I would say, going back to my old neighborhood. So I used to live in Inner Richmond on Clement Street. And that's when I lived with my ex-partner. And I have so many beautiful memories there. And really my entire 20s, I spent it over there. So at first it was very hard for me to go back because everything reminds me of my married life. And even thinking about it, I want to cry. But now I go back and I'm less sad about it because I realize that even though I no longer live that life, and even though I'm not in that marriage, I can still retain the happy memories, and I can still find a way to fall in love with the neighborhood that I loved so much for 13 years, regardless of my situation right now.
Can I give you a hug?
Yeah. Thank you.